The Women's Rights Party has strongly criticised a new proposal to grant police greater powers over protests, arguing it would not have prevented the failures that were seen at the Let Women Speak event in Auckland's Albert Park in March 2023. A newly released independent Police Conduct Authority, IPCA report, highlighted the police's inadequate risk assessment, poor planning and lack of resourcing, leading to a chaotic and unsafe environment for all. The party contends that these issues go beyond operational missteps, pointing to a broader disregard for women's rights and concerns, and see it as a lack of response to warnings from event organisers about potential violence. Women's Rights Party co-leader is Jill Ovens, and she joins me now. Hello, Jill.
Hello, how are you?
It is always good to have you on and have a chat. Jill, do you believe that the police deliberately failed to protect the Let Women Speak attendees and Posey Parker 2 years ago, or was it simply poor planning and resourcing?
No, I think it does go a lot deeper than that. And the IPCA report really doesn't look at what's behind it. It's actually quite surface. So what we know is that there was notification from the 17th of February, actually, so they knew well in advance of the event. And then from it's all detailed in the report, but from the 3rd of March, the organiser that was trying to make contact with them and was becoming increasingly concerned was really being pushed from one part of the police to the other.
Yeah.
So we're asking what really lay behind the failure to protect the mostly women supporters. And we know that during the period, particularly after what happened in Melbourne and Hobart with the Kelly J. Keane Let Women Speak events, was that the New Zealand's Police Intelligence Unit, who knew that we had one, probably like the FBI or something, they were based in Wellington, and they knew and they alerted Auckland Police that there was a concern. But this just seems to have been ignored. And the police in this report, argue that they had poor planning and all the rest and didn't really realise what the situation was going to be. But anybody who was listening to the news or watching social media knew in that week after Melbourne that this was going to be a disaster, that was going to be a huge protest against the Let Women Speak event.
So that, Jill, that's quite disturbing then. So you are suggesting that even though the police, as you said, that we saw what had happened in Melbourne, and then we had there was pushback here. I think they tried. Did they try and stop Kelly J. Keane coming into the country? Yes, that was
the Green Party.
The Green Party. And then you had well publicised political rhetoric and calls to action, like you said, from the Greens and Labour MPs. So the police, there was lots of warnings that this was going to kick off. And you're saying that they seem to have just ignored it all.
Well, yes, so we're asking a question, were the police taking their cue from the politicians? You've got Michael Woods, who was the immigration minister, saying,
terrible stuff.
Yeah, that they accused them of incorrect worldviews and being disingenuous and dangerous. There were also accusations that Kelly J. Keane and her supporters were neo-Nazis and white supremacists and all that, none of which had any basis and just incited hatred and hostility against Kelly J. Keane and her supporters. So, I'll just give you an example from the then Minister of Justice, who 3 days before the event put out this call for action. Let's do what we do, Aotearoa. Stand up, make some noise and support our trans whānau by showing up and drowning out any bigotry. So you do have to wonder when you've got the Minister of Justice coming out like that, Grant Robertson, who was the Deputy Prime Minister, Michael Woods, the Immigration Minister, and
Police Commissioner Andrew Costa, Jill. who was
Yeah,
as
so that's right.
left as you go.
Well, and people say, oh, politicians can't directly influence police operations, but police, we're questioning whether police took their cue from the politicians, or was this a deliberate decision from on high? But the other part about it is the FSU revealed that the police have been doing training on hate crimes, and part of that diversity training that they get, we think it reinforces the bias against women who want to defend our rights. So we know that there were posters of these women holding up placards saying there are only two genders. I mean, it's so stupid because we would never say that. We know that gender identitarians think there's hundreds of genders, but there's only two sexes. But anyway, you wonder whether that's a bias that influenced the fact that they just didn't take it seriously. And then, of course...
Yeah. Oh, no, keep going. I was going to mention, I touched on this actually on Monday about what had happened with Destiny's Church and part of his Man Up team out in Te Atatu in Auckland over the weekend at the reading in the library by the drag king. And what happened, with the protesters barging in and going in, and everyone was fearing for their lives, and how the police, it was that, Jill, to me, was very differently handled by police than what we saw at Albert Park.
Well, what I noticed was the coverage of the actual Pride Parade when the Man Up people did their haka. And you could see the line of police in between the Pride Parade and the guys doing the haka. Yes. And that's what we expected. When we arrived at Albert Park at about 10:30, there's hardly any of us, but we could see their crowd was building and building. And anyway, we could see that there was a barrier set up, that there was a fence, a metal fence, and then inside that, about a metre, there was a rope fence, and we assumed that that's where the police would line up, as we had seen actually in Melbourne when some of their police were on horseback. But but nothing, and we're going, where are the police? We couldn't see them at all, and we're going, it felt like sitting ducks. And all the way through, what really kind of annoyed me about their approach is that people were desperately calling 111, and it wasn't just people at the event. Because it was being live streamed, once Kelly J arrived and all hell broke loose, there were people making 111 calls from all over the country. Apparently they received 118 111 calls, and they just brushed them off. Yeah. And other people went over to, they saw a couple of police under a tree and said, Where are the police? And they said, they're over there, and pointed to the rotunda, but they certainly were not, because we didn't even know they were there until we saw the video lately. And it turns out that they were just hanging around their police van, which was parked over by Princess Street on the edge of Albert Park. So, and then they've got the cheek to suggest that they responded by assisting private security guards in facilitating the main speaker to leave and others to leave. I'm reading this from their report, if they feel unsafe. That's just a lie. That is an absolute lie, and there is video footage of Kelly J. Keane and the security guard and some of the marshals and supporters trying to help Kelly J. leave the venue, leave the park. Yeah. And they were being pushed and shoved. They were being hit. Tanya was, shoved over. She fell down. And
sorry, what the report says, the report tries to say that police helped her leave. Yeah,
they didn't.
And they weren't even in there. Wow.
They were on the edge, and when she got to the edge, they then took over. But when this was all happening, a couple of the marshals have told me that they went over to that van and they said, "Look what's happening." And they said, we don't have a duty to protect people. That's rubbish too. Of course they do.
We don't. What do they say? A police officer said that. We don't have a duty to protect.
To protect their safety. So what were they talking about? Anyway, I just wanted to, if you've got time,
Yes.
day, who was there, who is one of these marshals I'm talking about. She says, I can see that the police was clearly buried at the end of the extensive report that gave much more attention to the more minor police failings and other protest settings. So what she's referring to here is that there's this 156-page report, but you don't even get to anything about Let Women Speak till page 77, which is an appendix, so it's buried. Anyway, just to continue, she says it radically understates the willful police failings on that day that put Posey's life and the lives and safety of her supporters at serious risk, a risk that extensive videos taken on the day, as well as the testimonies and police complaints made by the women, including me, in attendance on the day, provide ample evidence of. And indeed, they outright lied about police helping Posey to safety, as Simon's actually independent videos clearly show. And they also show that her security and the marshals saved her life that day while the police sat in their vans at the behest of their commander doing nothing, with the women literally begging them for help. And all the while this person was knocked to the ground, kicked and trampled on, as you can see in the videos, and we were all afraid of our lives.
Shocking.